Well, God bless you. Welcome to another broadcast and taping of the Brinson Institute. You that are watching and listening to us by radio, we're just again excited about what God is doing in this season. I'm sure you have listened to our other broadcasts this month and you are excited about this is your transitional season. This is your new beginning. This is your new year. God is moving you from one place to another. And some of you are entering into a new project in life, a new project, a new sensitivity, a sensitivity that you've always had. But now God said, now let's do something about that. And let's kind of begin to see yourselves moving into a new ministry or a new project, a new idea, a new concept, which is going to involve others. And at the same time, is going to involve you working within the system that you're in. I want to take some time out and do a little teaching today. Normally we have guests and, sometime, but, some have challenged me and say, Apostle Brinson, Dr. Brinson, we want you to at least every now and then drop a teaching in. And so today I want to, in keeping with where we are, for some of you, this is the Yuletide season. It's the season of giving and exchange. As one author says, Jesus is the reason for the Christmas season. For us, this is a season we have, I guess, rubber stamped this teaching to be December 2017 going on 18. But no matter what year that you are watching this teaching, I'm sure this teaching will continue to ring and be important to you in your lives and give you challenge. I want to take a look at Nehemiah today. I want to take a look at Nehemiah centered around his assignment, his purpose, the complications of his call, and also some principles of leadership. Within Nehemiah, we see a leader. In Nehemiah, we see a servant. Within Nehemiah, we see some prophetic things going on in his life and his relationship to coordinate and lead others and bring them into a newness of a project, of something that God had given him the strength and his trust in them. So I want to take a look at Nehemiah. You that have your Bibles, if we would look in Bibles, I got some of my notes here to just look at so that I can stay focused. But if we look at Nehemiah, the book of Nehemiah, and I want to look at the second chapter of the book of Nehemiah today. And I want to pull some things. The story of Nehemiah, as you know it, Nehemiah was a king's cupbearer. And as a king's cupbearer, he had to have some sense of trustworthiness and character to be in the presence of the king. One of the things I think that's important as God began to use us and look at some principles of leadership, that we must always understand that character is key to anything we do. I put some notes to myself, so I will be from time to time looking down, referring to my notes, but character is key. A lot of us don't understand that character comes out of the capacity of a person to have trust in you. And it comes out of trust and credibility. And a lot of us, wow, we need to work on our character. We're not faithful. We're not committed. We say one thing and do another. And sometimes it's hard for some of us who God has given certain things to do. And we like to get into these big projects and stuff. And yet our character, it's just wow. Our character is just wow. So, what character, let me say that trust and credibility within your character is built through time. And the character is built through time of being faithful. To be faithful. The question that we must ask ourselves, how faithful have we been in seasons and times with people? In our relationships, in situations, faithful to what has been entrusted into us, faithful to programs, faithful to our job tasks. So, faithful service, to be able to do faithful service makes others to trust you. So your level of trust and credibility is directly related to your capacity to prove to be faithful in your service. We need to take a look at that. Nehemiah helps us see that. And so the book of Nehemiah kind of reveals to us a man of high integrity and character, that he could be the king's cupbearer. The king's cupbearer, the one that was in the presence of the king, that also pressed the grapes and the wine of the king. And it was something about the qualifications of a cupbearer. A cupbearer was not to be able to show emotions. A cupbearer had to be able to keep secrets, because when the king would drink his wine and sort of sometimes get excited, the king would say things that should not be repeated in the presence of others. The king would sometimes, a person that is relating to fine wines will tell certain issues and release certain information, and you got to be able to keep it. You got to be able to maintain your integrity. So you have to really notice that Nehemiah being a king cupbearer and the different ups and downs and moves that the king went through as the king tasted and drank of the wine. His job was to taste the wine first to make sure nobody poisoned the king, but to make sure that the wine was good. So while the king drank wine, I'm sure that the king would go through his emotions of sometimes talking about things, saying things, sometimes not being so much filled with sobriety and sober. As we say, a drunk man's thoughts, a drunk man's words is a sober man's thoughts. People say things sometimes when they full of it, And so if you're a cupbearer, you got to know how to measure it. So his integrity and his character and his trustworthiness of the king granted him favor as a leader among his people and a leader in the system of the king. So what we have to understand is and when God gives us a project and he gives us an assignment, we have some leadership capacities. And even when we look at an apostolic prophetic paradigm, that God calls many of us to work within the systems of this world. The kingdom of our God is found and developed in the systems. So in the midst of the world's kingdoms, thy kingdom come. The kingdom of God comes into the kingdom of the world. Our job is to implement kingdom in kingdoms. So therefore, if we look at the systems that we're in, and God has called you to new projects, to new beings, to new things, that you sometimes, God will say, I need you to stay in the system. I need you to be a light in the system. I need you to learn the system, stay in the system, and work the system for my glory. Sometimes people are caught by systematic issues, and certain systems and institutions cause certain pain. But if we run out of the systems, then who will sit in the systems to cause systems to change? So we're in the world, but not of the world, but God calls us to be a light in the world. So we go into the system and light it up. So we have to have a sense of credibility, a sense of character. And so therefore, we must be able to understand, because see, character develops over time. As we grow through struggles, through hardships, through pain, through disappointment, through gladness, through sorrow, our character is developed. Trustworthiness and credibility is developed through time. And so if we're going to be a good leader, if we're going to work projects for the kingdom, we have to begin to take a look at our character, one's character. And then as we look at that, my challenge is, how do we then, within the system, for those of us who work within systems, institutions are developed to transport and to keep and to process ideas and also means of activity. So if I'm going to do something, if I'm going to have something, if I'm going to want something to grow and be successful, and my thought process, I begin to put it into an institution and I institutionalize it so that it has resources and connections. It has all kinds of modalities to make that idea or concept work, because I've institutionalized it with people. I put it in place or places, and I have things that is attached to that, so it becomes institutionalized. So therefore, if I'm going to work inside a system, Nehemiah learned as the king's cupbearer that he had to work within the system. And so even if we look even in the Old Testament at certain heroes of the faith, they learn how to work within the system. Think of Esther. She had to learn how to work within the system, even and go through the process of what it means to be married to the king. Go read the book of Esther and see the things she had to do and did. She didn't complain. She had to learn how to work within the system. Esther, Ezra, Nehemiah, Jacob had to learn how to work within the system. And out of the system, God used him. Some of you all, God wants to use in new dynamic ways, but he don't want you to run out the system. He wants you to stay in the system, because there are others who have been victimized by the system, or the influence of other system can change their life, their circumstance, and their situation. And you are that key person in the system that God says, I need you to be a leader. And I need you to stay in the system, to work the system, so that because of your integrity and character in the system, I'm going to allow you to use some of the goods of the system to work systematically and helping others. Have you thought about that? Instead of running away to stay, I'm talking to somebody. Your job, your situation, your circumstance, because it's hard. But look at the value what value do you bring to where you are? And how can you be a better help and an influence inside rather than outside beating up on inside? Some of us have to stay within the system. So we as ministers and servants of the gospel, we must learn that principle that some of us, God has called to live and stay within the system, to stay within the culture. We didn't say the culture was saved, but go into the culture. For those of us who understand the different influence of a sphere of influence of the culture, the 7, 8 mountains of culture, those of us who are in family and education and music and entertainment and the arts and economics and entrepreneurship, knows that we need some people in the system to make changes, to get influence, to have some leverage so that we can do certain things that God requires for us to do to bring changes in others' lives. So as we look at Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 1 through 8, when you have time to read it, you find Nehemiah working within the system and being held accountable to the system, and at the same time having a good character while in the system that put him in a position to have a discussion with the leader or the head of the system, in this case, the king. King Artaxerxes. He was the cupbearer. He was in the system. But he had trustworthiness and self-control in the midst of his pain and his frustration. In the midst of the project and idea that he had in his heart, he learned how to work the system to his advantage by keeping his character good and learning the kinds of things he needed to do as a leader that stood in the position to be able to use his influence to get some things done. Develop a relationship with those that were in power, to be able to leverage influence by working as a leader, yet in the system. God calls some of us and some of you, wherever you are, to work in that system. And so as we look at Nehemiah, we see that was important, that Nehemiah worked in the system. Now, when you work in the system, you have to bathe your activity in prayer. You've got to be able to pray. You've got to be able to also have connections both in the system and outside of the system. So if you read Nehemiah, you read Nehemiah chapter 1, verses 4 through 11, you see that there were others. When I look at Nehemiah chapter 1, verses 4 through 11, it was others that he had to understand that you're in the system. Don't think you're better than everybody else. Submit yourself, find other persons, and then begin to seek God. So Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 4:11 says, so it was when I heard the words, he heard the words of the captivity of his people. He sat down and wept and mourned for many days. He was fasting and praying before God. And he said, God, what about your covenant? Have an ear to hear. And he began to talk about the sins and the issues. He began to also identify with the people that were on the outside. Sometimes we're in a system and we don't want to identify with those outside the system, because sometimes we don't understand some of the folk outside the system are going through some of the same things those of you in the system are going through. And some of us that are in the system are representatives and leaders and come from those people outside the system. And because God has blessed you to be in the system, don't mean you need to look down on those outside the system, but you need to become sensitive to see what the system that you're in can help those who are part of you that happen to be on the outside. That's a principle of leadership. Look at Nehemiah. Examine that. Where are you? How does that fit within you? Those are complications of the call. God has a call. He positions you, but there are certain complications. But we have to live with those complications, understand them, and move forward and doing the work. And I believe as some of you all are moving into 2018 and moving to your seasons, and some are in transition, God is calling you to become a leader by working within the system to help those outside the system. And how do we work together within the system, both in and out? So look at Nehemiah. So as we look at that, I saw that, well, we have to begin to have a sense of credibility. We have to have a sense of character. We must learn how to work inside the system. And then while we're working inside the system, we have to always don't forget prayer. We've got to seek God's power and presence in prayer throughout our work. God, give me the power. God, help me. Thank you for my grace. Thank you for the grace that you've given me. And that if I'm going to accomplish God's work and power, then I have to understand that my prayer for him to give me the power and understanding is essential to perform the work assignment while in the system. So within that, understanding character, understanding to be able to work within the system and work within bathing what we do in prayer, I began to look at certain things within where we were. So here in Nehemiah and the story of Nehemiah, we begin to see that in Nehemiah had to begin to know what he needed. Sometimes we have an idea, we have a concern, and we're in a situation of influence. And when we talk to those persons that are in those areas of power, and they ask us, what do we need? We don't know. We know how to talk about the issue. We know how to complain. Or I'm going to pray that God do this and God work this out here. So when the question comes, what do you need to change, or how can I help you? Well, now I got to go pray, but I don't know. No. We need to be able to say, God, now while I have this concern and while I'm in the system, I need you to begin to enlighten me with strategies of what I need, how I need to do it, when I need to do it, and where's the best area. Those things we need to keep in our mind as leaders, to know the when, what, where, and how, and the timing. So when God begins to use us as we walk around influential people and we're in the system, we'll be able to have an answer. Some of us, we need to confess that, God, I flunked. because I was in a position to utilize my influence and my know-how in the system, and the system came to me with the capacity of monies or connections of influence and asked me what is the best way to do it, and I had to go home and research. I didn't have an answer. We need to begin to make sure that we have an answer, to understand that as we work inside of the system, that we must be thoughtful and understand what we need to do. So as I began to look at that, I began to understand that once he did that, when the king asked him, he said, look at you, you have a concern. What is it that you need? How can I help you? Oh, that's the big question that's coming for us that are in major projects and God is using us. We have a concern for our people, our situations, certain concerns. And while you are working in the system, you must always be prepared for the big question. So how can I help? So how can we help you? What is it that you need? So look here, Nehemiah the king says, so he prayed and the king says, then the king said to me, what do you request? Oh my God, what do you request? I got to get a quick prayer in here now. God, I got to hear what you say. Now, God, I need to listen. I need to hear you. I just can't be all caught up in my flesh now because there's a key, crucial question on the table. And as a leader, finally, my time, my commitment, my character has brought me to this position of a place of power, of a place of position that I'm being asked the major question, what do you need? So Nehemiah, he said he prayed and he asked, he said, and see, I said to the king, if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, you know my character, you know who I am, I ask that you send me to Judah, to the city of my father's tombs, that I may rebuild it. So what's the assignment? How do you understand your assignment? Based upon your assignment and your purpose, when you're in the system and you have position in the system, and then you have some connections where you are in a moment, in a position to talk with those who can make a difference in power, that you are clear of your assignment and know what must be done and how and what is required. Oh, based upon my assignment, I need to go home. I need you to send me. Not only do I want to go, I need you to send me. You know, Nehemiah was very creative. I need you. I want to go with some power behind me, right? Send me. So if anybody asks me why I'm coming with purpose and power, but I'm coming out of authority. I need some authority in what I do. Send me. And the king said to me, how long will you be? Now he can say, well, I don't know. You know, we like to do things. We want things. We want people to be involved with us. We want to go places. We have no sense of boundaries. No. We don't have a sense of our sphere of influence. We have no timing concern. Well, you know, whatever. No, it's not no whatever. Well, how long you gonna go? How long you gonna be gone? How much time do you need? Well, I need some time. Well, how much? Well, I never thought about it. No, you must think about it. How much time? What kind of time as a leader is put on projects? How do we look at time? How do we look at what God has given us? How do we look at what and how long something? What is our plan? What's your plan? How much time will it take? So he says, how long will your journey be, and when will you return? How long is it going to take you to get there? And then how long you going to stay? And when will you come back? Some of us can't answer those questions. You know, you talk to your friend or your spouse or something, you know, God told me I need to go south to do something. And finally, somebody says, I'm going to let you go. So when are you going to leave? How long are you going to be gone? What do you need while you're down there? And when you come back? And you don't know. But you've been walking around pouting, saying, oh, Lord, if you just bless me, if you let me go. But you haven't put together, you haven't counted up the cost, you haven't plotted your course, you have no clue. The leadership, let's look at Nehemiah. You've got to be able, when God puts you around people of influence, you've got to be able to prepare for your day of your encounter. There's going to be a day, there's going to be a time, I'm going to be asked the question, what do I need? And God is going to give me favor. You praying for favor. You praying that God give you favor. You praying that God open up your understanding. You praying that God touch that person's heart, touch that resource's heart. And when the heart has been touched and the time has come and the answers, the questions are being answered, you don't have, the questions are being asked rather, you don't have an answer. Look at Nehemiah. He had an answer. He was ready. He said, I need to go. Let us be given me. So as I go, I don't be stopped along the way. He had already understood where he had to go. What I need some toll. I need you to give me some toll booth money. I'm going to take I need an iPass. In fact, just give me I've got to travel. I'm going on this highway. I got to pay a lot of tolls, so I need some resource. So maybe I just need an iPass. Give me an iPass. Give me one of those things, the controllers that I could put in my car so I could just pass on through, don't have to stop, don't have to ask no questions, don't have to check with this, don't have to check with that. I need to know what are my checkpoints and my stop points along the way, and how do I get them cleared before I leave? So when I get to those points, it won't be aha. Haven't you seen people that start a project and get going, and then they end it and looking good, they get stuck along the way, stopped along the way by other people of power and position, and they are trying to have a reference of who sent them, but they don't have their passport to get through. How do we understand how God wants to use us? And how do we begin to understand that we must be thoughtful? We must think clearly. We must have clear understanding in our purpose and our project. Don't get so caught up in doing a project that you don't think and be thoughtful and prayerful about what needs to happen. And so as we look at our lesson today, we find out that Nehemiah, he approached his work thoughtfully, carefully, and he was prepared. Thoughtfully, carefully, and he was prepared. That's what we always need to look at. Are you prepared to do what God has assigned you? Are you thoughtful in that situation? Because that's what he was. And so therefore, he began to understand that. And as he began to understand that, he didn't tell everybody his business. He needed to take time out to do some research and assessment on his own. There's so much in the book of Nehemiah. I'm not going to even, I can't even begin. As I begin to look at Nehemiah, I found 12 principles. You may be able to find more than that. I just wanted to get you started. So let's go and read Nehemiah. Go read the book of Nehemiah, in fact, chapters 1 and 2, and begin to see exactly what you find. Now, I just got to verse 11, and it's time, my time is already up and ended. So I want you to continue this Bible study on your own. Go read Nehemiah, especially chapter 2. See how he dealt with opposition. See how he came up with a plan. See how he was able to get other people to follow him and work with them. See how he wrote the vision and made it plain. And see how you have to understand it. Every time you move on something, the enemy is going to try to fight you, but can you stay focused? Well, until next time, you have been watching and participating with your host. I'm Apostle Dr. Sylvester Ball Princeton III of the Brinson Institute. And I want you in 2018 to stay focused. As a leader, remember, it is important to get others to work with you, and it's important to hear what God is saying in times like these. Until next time, shalom.